Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for listening. I wanted to come on here to talk about the Sociology of Gender course that I took for the winter this year. Well, this past month, I should say. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what I've learned throughout this course, so that you all can get a better understanding of what this video presentation will be and what my learning analysis paper will say. And I know that the analysis paper is the story of the course and my place in it, and it gives me a chance to really summarize everything that I've learned in detail. So I wanted to piggyback on some of the things that we talked about throughout the course in terms of, we talked about not just the sociology of gender, but we've also, we've also had conversations about understanding the construction of social identities. We've talked about the complexity of identities, the body and gender, race, gender, and sex, and the family and work dynamics between both genders. We've talked about the women's movement recently, and we've also had a conversation about our personal testimonies and our personal stories in terms of how we experienced race, sexism, and things of that nature with our own storylines. I do know that everybody's story is different. I'm happy that I had the privilege of sharing my story, a little bit about my story as a young African American male here in society. I think in one of my discussion responses within the family and gender and work discussion board, I had a conversation. I spoke a lot about what it meant to be. I talked about the pay gap that exists between men and women in the workforce, and I also talk about my role as I used Bonnie Thornton Dill, Our Mother's Grief, Racial Ethnic Women in the Maintenance of Families. I used that reading. Derek Thompson's reading of Yes, Men Should Do More Housework, and also the Madonna Harrington Mayer's source of family status and poverty, and I used that to describe the dynamics within the household with our families. And I talk about the pay gap that exists between men and women in the workforce. I talk about how the role of being a nurturer and the reproductive labor force that we learned about. I also talked about women of color and how gender roles and responsibilities have factored into why that could contribute to some of the setbacks and comebacks for women in these particular ethnic groups because of that. I'm trying to look to see, but also I've also learned about the body and gender. What I took from that is how I was comfortable in my skin, or how I've been able to identify myself in the world, as a young black male. And I talk about that experience often. And I talked about this experience within these readings. I used Barbara McDonald's writing, Look Me in the Eye, Old Women Aging and Ageism, of Movement of Old Lesbians, as well as Mayer's reading, and Melba Sanchez Endinez, The Puerto Rican Elderly Women, Shared Meanings and Informal Support Networks. I talked about, the LGBTQ community, and I also talked about why I feel as though women receive smaller pensions than their husbands when they take on domestic roles like cooking, cleaning, and taking care of their children. And I also talk about women in the workforce and how how and why the disparities exist between men and women in the workforce, and even when they do domestic work. Please forgive me. I'm just trying to, gather my notes here. And I've between Samantha, Megan, Rebecca, and Katrina, I really do appreciate everybody chiming in on my posts. I was definitely happy to share my experience as an African American male here in society, because I feel like a lot of people should understand, but after reading the responses and after reading a lot of the insight that the ladies provided for me, it definitely gave me an opportunity to educate them even more and to just share my experience and to demonstrate a certain level of transparency and authenticity, what it means to be a male in society and what it means to be a minority and a black male in society, because it factored into everything that I talked about, and even with the women's movement, how I perceive the women's movement. I even chimed in on a couple of posts talking about how I think that even though women have achieved so much and they still are achieving so much, how I was thinking about how men can continue to support women in their endeavors, whether it's advancement in the workplace, fighting for equal pay for equal work, or even creating more diversity within the job market and even in the family life, the home environment. I definitely had an opportunity to read more sources from what we discussed, in addition to some of the readings that I mentioned, to talk about what it meant to actually be part of this culture. I learned about a lot of the historical roots that are affiliated with some of the lessons that we learned. I did engage and contribute to all of the class discussions, and I did gain new perspectives on the Filipino culture, because Katrina, she definitely shared a lot about the Filipino culture and what it means to be an Asian woman here in the world, and what her experiences were. Megan talked about her experience, and Rebecca and Samantha also shared their experience about what it meant to be women in the world, and what it meant to be women not only in the workforce, but just throughout their course of life. I was definitely able to learn a lot from them, and I definitely appreciate everybody being respectful. I'm glad that everybody demonstrated a level of respect in terms of everybody else and what they shared. I've shared some things myself that I've never really thought that I would have been able to share, because I think that being a black male in society is something that a lot of people don't understand. And because I am fighting against the stereotypes and I'm not displaying any of the stereotypes, I think that people have an opportunity to see things in a different light and in a better light. So I'm glad that I had a chance to be a part of this course, and I'm glad that you all had a chance and had enough respect for me to just stop and to just comment, provide insight, and to just listen to what I had to say, because I demonstrated a lot of what I said through its merit and through its value. So I love you guys, I thank you guys, and I wish you the best in all of your future endeavors, and I thank our professor for giving me the opportunity to meet you guys and to share what I shared. So I'll see you guys soon, and I wish you the best of luck.